Well, I'm joined in the studio now by the news analyst Joseph Danquah. Joseph, some really vivid and quite horrible pictures there, actually. It looks like things are really getting out of control there now.
Yes, it is. It's a very serious situation. If it's not arrested before it gets out of hand, then this country could go back into the past of genocide and killings and war, because Nkurunziza has caused this problem. I mean, he came into power 10 years ago, first elected by parliament and then secondly by a universal suffrage. Now his party and he himself is saying that the first election wasn't direct, wasn't a direct election but indirect, so therefore constitutionally he can stand for a third term, but the people of the country don't want it so.
It's very strange, isn't it? Because if most people, from the outside at least, assumed or thought that he had been elected democratically, you'd assume he'd have some kind of pride in the fact that he was elected democratically and would want to continue that as his legacy going forward, that he wasn't, a leader who's ruling like despotically, but he was elected by the people. It now looks anything but that, doesn't it? It looked like his legacy is now going to be one of a tyrant as opposed to one of a democratically elected leader.
Yes, this is the paradox of it. This country had been ruled by it had a monarchy before the military overthrew the monarchy in the 60s, and then they had a period whereby they had one-party rule and then a dictatorship. By 1993, when Milka Ndadaye was the first democratically elected president, that democratic experiment lasted for only 3 months, and he was assassinated, and that led to a genocide where over 300,000 people died. You see, and if he President Nkurunziza does not take care, he can make the country slide into that period of genocide which happened in the 90s, because you don't want a situation whereby people then will see there's no other way of getting rid of a government than to take up arms, but they have to go to the ballot box, which I think they should.
50,000 people have been fleeing already. They obviously do fear that, another genocide. What should the international community, the countries surrounding this place, Burundi, do to try and help these people who are now refugees?
Yeah, well, they have to accept them, take them in, but many of those countries are also scared of the cross-border shocks in terms of them, even though maybe they're political refugees, they might have economic migrants, and this could also cause a lot of problems within their own countries. I mean, those countries around them, like Rwanda, Tanzania, and then Congo, DR, should take these people in, because this is a country which has been bedeviled by poverty. 80% of the people live below the poverty line. 57% of children are malnutrition. They have the highest food hunger index, whereby a lot of people are living hungry. You've got a lot of people uneducated, and it's a very dire situation. So I think that these countries around Burundi should take in these refugees and then sort the situation by meeting the president and then telling him what they want him to do.
Yeah, you mentioned there that Burundi is so poor, one of the poorest countries in the world, and very high rates of malnutrition. Do you think this is something also that's fueling this backlash against Nkurunziza? If everything else was fine in the country, maybe people would allow him to have a third term?
Yes, well, I mean, even as much as maybe he's trying to break the constitution or go against the constitution, human beings, or generally the populace, want to see bread and butter issues solved. If a man is hungry, he's also angry, and therefore, if you're not able to meet your role or live up to your role as a president to provide for your people security, economic harmony and everything else, therefore the people will rise up against you and say you're no good, we don't want you anymore. And he's doing it outside the constitution. Therefore, that is why it's widespread.
As someone who's lived in China, I can tell you that most people in China would much rather be rich or wealthy or have more money in their pockets than worry about whether they have a democracy or whether they have a communist party ruling them. So yeah, it goes to that problem, doesn't it? The cause of that problem. If the conditions in the country may be better, maybe we wouldn't be seeing this backlash on the streets. East African leaders meeting in Tanzania tomorrow. What should they do about this? What should they be talking about and doing?
I think they should tell him in no uncertain terms that he's going against the constitution. This thing is very volatile because they are next to Rwanda. Rwanda had a similar problem with genocide. Congo, DR also is grappling with its own problems in Goma. You also got a place like Tanzania, which is quite stable. But you see, economically, East Africa, the East African community, they work together, and you know they've got so many business plans on the table. For instance, there's a 1,700-kilometer proposal to have a railroad line within East Africa where it will bring about economic harmony. So they need to tell him in certain terms that look, he needs to go across his constitution. Does he want his people to continue to live under the poverty line, or does he want the people to live in peace? He has to choose between the two.
Should the EU or the US be getting involved, or would that complicate things?
Well, they have to, but you see, the EU and the US, during the genocide of the 1990s, turned their back on Rwanda and Burundi, specifically Burundi. They didn't want to know. They have to now stand up to their responsibility to help that country, because, mind you, if they don't go in and help, it's going to have a trickle-down effect to other countries, and you don't. Africa already has its problems of instability and so many, ethnic and, tribal wars. So please, I will appeal to the EU and the US to use their good offices to try to bring peace into that region.
You mentioned the instability in the countries surrounding Burundi. Do you think there's a fear that if the violence does get really out of control in Burundi, that this could spread to neighborhoods?
Yes, it can, because already, places like Goma, which you've got camps, refugee camps, the rebels usually would fight in their country and move into those camps, mingle amongst the people, and then come back. So that also can cause a lot of instability to the countries around, you see. So what they need to do is that those countries need to close their borders, make sure that they police their borders very well, and then make sure that only genuine refugees come into the country, and then they would take it from there.
Is the only thing that can really happen, as opposed to lots of people dying, is the only way that this country can move forward if Nkurunziza steps aside? Yes,
I think so. I mean, you see, what now is on the side, in a way, of the people is that this is more political than ethnic, in the terms of, it's moved from ethnicity to political. And that is why we haven't seen the extent of killings as it was in the 70s and 80s. That is a good thing about, in a way, that's a good thing about it. If it continues, it could spiral into something else. And I would say that President Nkurunziza has been very, 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 very wrong in this issue. He's a son of a former governor who was killed during the genocide in the 1970s, and he lost a lot of his family members through genocide. So he should be the first one to realize that, no, peace is more better than me keeping power. Absolutely. Certainly a situation to keep a close eye on. Joseph Danquah, for now, thank you very much indeed.